Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast brought to you by the Draft Professors. Today's podcast is on linebackers. We're joined with three really good guests. Sam Teets, Anthony Russo, EJ Holt will be here shortly, and James Foster let us know that he could not be here today as we finish out doing the linebacker group. Anthony, as we look at the linebacker class, and you've had a chance to look at about 24 linebacking prospects, how do you feel about the linebacking class?
I feel really good about it. I think this is one of the best linebacking groups just as a whole. I mean, at least in the past few years. I think not only is there talent like at the top, and I think the guys we're gonna talk about tonight, I think fit the bill of like potential first round linebackers, if not like top 50 players. But there's like good depth in this class too. I think that's sort of the slept on part of the linebacker discussion is there's some good depth that you can get on day two and potentially even like early day three. I still think you could get a quality starter or a quality depth sort of rotational piece. So I think this is a really good linebacking group. Covers a lot of different like skill sets and what they're able to offer different schemes and position, what they can do at different positions on a defense. So, I feel really good about this group.
And Sam, how many linebackers do you have graded in your top 50 right now?
My top 50, you're probably looking at least four, maybe five. I've got five guys with early third round grades or better right now. I've got six in my top 100. I probably feel really good about the top five, and then you kind of just drop off after that. Where I don't really know. You can pick a lot of potential issues out with the rest of them. So I do think there's some real star power at the top of this linebacker class. I do think there's depth where you'll have a couple of these fourth or fifth round linebackers you'll pick who will end up playing extended roles in the NFL, maybe work into being these spot stars and eventually transition to being more full-time guys at some point, because we know that happens with every draft class. You get a couple of day three starters. There's a lot of depth in this linebacker class, but I do think that the warts are a little bit bigger for the fourth and fifth round guys than maybe I was anticipating going into the process.
And EJ, how are you feeling about the linebacker class compared to years past?
I feel good about it. In years past, we've had one or two maybe high end talents, but now it's you got mainly two really high end athletic talents. Then you got a bunch of highly skilled, highly instinctual linebackers coming down after that. So I see a lot of guys with a lot of starter upside. Even in the later round picks, there are guys with starter upside because you don't have to be that super athlete at the middle linebacker position in order to be a serviceable linebacker. But with this class, you got a lot of versatility. You got a lot of instincts. You got a lot of guys that actually know what they're doing behind that line of scrimmage. So that's what's really exciting about this class.
And we're going to be talking about a lot of those exciting players that EJ mentioned today. So today we're talking about CJ Allen from Georgia, Drayk Bowen from Notre Dame, Deontae Lawson from Alabama, Taureen York from Texas A&M, Whit Weeks from LSU, Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas, Sonny Styles from Ohio State, and Arvell Reese from Ohio State. And we're going to kick the show off with CJ Allen. EJ, what did you see when you watched CJ Allen?
I saw a solid player. This is a guy I watched him versus Florida. This is a guy with a track and field background from high school, not as far as running a 100-meter dash or anything like that, but in shot put. With the shot put, that just shows you like the upper body strength that has been trained with him, and you see that on film. He's a pretty solid tackler. I like he's one of these guys where you see he's a sideline to sideline guy. You want him like in the middle of all the action. I like his read and react. He has short area bursts, not a ton of long speed, but he's explosive in short areas. which will and like that short area, it helps a little bit when he's attacking the line of scrimmage, but in coverage, he'll struggle a little bit. He's assignment sound. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows what he's seeing behind that line of scrimmage. You could tell he's had his head in the playbook. So because you can see him directing traffic, you see him pointing out guys where to be at. But I think he's just your typical solid linebacker. I wouldn't say he's a high-end athlete. That's probably why he's not going to get drafted as high as some of the other guys. But when you put him in a defense and you surround him with other guys with a little bit more range, you can see his strengths will be playing against the run, playing downhill. He can drop into those short zones in the middle of the field. That's just fine by him. But you just get a solid package at the linebacker position, not a high-end athlete or not really a high-end anything, but he's got the instincts, he's got the physicality. He can be your green dot meaning the guy that relays the calls to the rest of the defense and gets everybody lined up. He can be that. He has that type of upside. So what I see with CJ Allen is I see a solid linebacker with starter potential.
And if somebody took him in round 2, would you call that criminal, or do you think that's where you have him valued?
I mean, it depends on who takes him, because like that's the thing, beauty's in the eye of the beholder with these teams. So if it's teams that he's a perfect fit with takes him in the second round, I'm not mad at it. But if it's some team that's not going to do nothing with him and they think he's just going to come in and save your linebacker position, then that's probably a bad draft pick. But I wouldn't be shocked to see some team grab him in the second round if they really like what they see.
Okay. Anthony, where are you in CJ Allen from Georgia?
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like I might actually be a bit higher on him than EJ is. I think he is, and this is going to sound like a bit of helmet scouting, but I think he's Roquan Smith light, basically. I think he has that downfield sort of just attacking mentality that EJ touched on, where he can make some really excellent plays against the run. I think he's able to diagnose very well, and that helps him attack. He's not an elite athlete, like EJ said. I do think I'd maybe say he's an underrated athlete. I think he's a very good athlete. I just think when you watch him, so like Raylan Wilson, for example, who's also on Georgia and is a linebacker, I think is a better athlete. And so kind of by default, it almost looks like CJ isn't an elite athlete, but I still think he's a very good one. I think he is rangy. I think he is one of the best tacklers in this class as well. Very reliable when it comes to being able to wrap up, ball carriers, and very rarely does he get faulted for any kind of bad technique when he's tackling people. I think his issues mainly are in coverage. That downfield sort of, explosiveness and attacking mentality that he has doesn't translate on the back end. You'll see his eyes are not where they need to be sometimes in coverage, and that allows receivers to be able to get a step on him, and then he doesn't really have that top speed, that top gear to be able to make up for it. So I do think that's an issue, but if you're a defense that's going to be using him in that, again, like that sort of Roquan Smith way of just downhill, attack the ball carrier and attack the backfield. I also think he can be a good blitzer for you. Not any kind of like elite, or I shouldn't say elite, but he's not going to project as any kind of edge rusher in the way that some of the other guys are that we're going to talk about. But I think he can be an asset for you as a blitzer. He has that pursuit ability. I think he's a late first, early second kind of guy for me right now. And I think that might also just be because we're going to talk about a couple of linebackers that have just had unbelievable seasons realistically, we're not going to see more than like 2 or 3 linebackers go in the first round. That's just how the position works. But if CJ Allen were in other recent classes that we've had, I think he would be linebacker 1 in quite a few of those classes. It's just in this class, there's just other freakish talents that we're talking about. But I think he's a really solid player all around.
Sam, are you going to be closer to Anthony or closer to EJ?
Let's split the middle evenly here. So I think this way, he's not a first round pick in my opinion. Like, this is clearly a second round pick. I got him as a linebacker 4 in this class for me. That being said, if he goes later than the second round, it'd be because him and his team really screwed something up in terms of the pre-draft process. Because I think there you can probably lock this player into the second round unless he makes some kind of significant mistake going through this process right now based on where he's at. In this linebacker class, I think he's an above average player in a lot of categories, but he's not great or elite at anything. I don't think he's the best linebacker in this class at anything in particular. He doesn't have Josiah Trotter's take on strength. He's really good in that area. He's better than a lot of dudes in this area in terms of being able to take on blocks at a high level with some power and some pop. Not as good as Arvell, Reese, or Josiah Trotter in that area. I do think there's some like phone booth level agility where he can sidestep and avoid blocks, which at his size is a pretty decent thing to do. I think he's got speed to make some plays in pursuit, but like Anthony and EJ both mentioned, you're talking about like long speed where he's isolated one-on-one against a guy. He doesn't really have that. There are some good closing bursts coming downhill. I think the real issue I have for him compared to some of the other guys we're talking about and being in this premier linebacker position, he just doesn't have very much coverage instincts and very much coverage impact right now. You know, a lot of it, he spends a lot of time covering grass versus actually covering man. You see like the mental processing in coverage when he's playing zone just is not to the point where he's going to be a playmaker for you in that area. That's something you have to project forward for him to develop into. I do think he has some patience issues where he's a little bit too willing to come downhill, and sometimes he runs himself out of plays or leads to him fitting the run properly, maybe fitting gap too early, and the running back cuts back and finds another lane. So I think there's some issues there you need to match up with and need kind of adjust. But that being said, like the coverage concerns, that's not isolated to him. Like we talked about, Josiah Trotter has some coverage issues. Arvell Reese doesn't have this extensive coverage profile either. So it's not like this is the only linebacker who's graded high in this class that has some question marks in coverage. But for me, I think more like second half of the second round type player, maybe just outside the top 50. He's probably in my top 50 because I don't view this class very highly, but I wouldn't be stunned if he's, in the late 50s or mid 50s in this draft class at the end of the day. Anthony brought up the tackling ability. He's got really good grip strength. He does not miss tackles very often. He's very clean in that area. And he's got quality arm. Like I mentioned, he does have some good take on ability to stack offensive linemen climbing up to him and work off of blocks that way. That Florida tape was amazing. I don't think the other 4 or 5 games I watched aren't really in that vein of play. But I think the Florida tape had some really high level moments. That is a good offensive line with future NFL players on it. Anthony, the one difference I would have for CJ Allen compared to Roquan Smith is Roquan Smith ran like a 92nd percentile 40 time. And I didn't pay a lot of attention to college football back then when Roquan was coming out, like the way I do now. But I did watch a lot of draft coverage, and I know that Roquan's ability in coverage was talked about a lot in that draft process. And he had showcases in the NFL. It was surprising at first because he did struggle in coverage when he first got into the league with Chicago, but then he developed into a better coverage linebacker by like year 3 or 4. That's something that CJ Allen's not going to have. He's not going to have that 92nd percentile speed to fall back on. So that's kind of the difference between me for these two players. CJ Allen's got a little bit more power to his build, a little bit more of a downhill player, versus Roquan had more range and had a little bit more versatility throughout the course of his game.
You see, and if we're getting into the debate of the comps, like I'm here for that. That is first class draft entertainment. Anthony, Drayk Bowen from Notre Dame, what did you see from him in 2025?
Yeah, so this was somebody who I had pretty high hopes for coming into the year. And again, this was kind of before we realized that this linebacker class was just going to be great. But I like Drayk Bowen. This was sort of one of the guys that I talked about as, kind of providing that good depth to the class instead of just the, superstar names that everybody's going to be talking about. I think he's a strong player. You see it there. He's 6'2", 235. Like, he's got a good build for the position. Very much like an old school, I'd say, like, classic kind of linebacker that you would think of, in the sort of like a 2000s kind of linebacker, where he's big and tough, but he's also smart. He's good at filling gaps that he needs to fill in the run game and identifying plays and being able to, make plays in the backfield. That Georgia reverse play that they ran last year when they played each other in the playoff, he just completely destroyed that play with both his strength and his intelligence. And that's kind of the player I think he is. I think he's really good at identifying and being able to attack the flats really well, like in coverage, screen passes, and underneath routes that running backs run. Like, he just does a really good job of, again, being able to diagnose them and then run out to them and be able to make plays. I don't think he's not a great athlete, and he's not great at being able to change direction quickly. Not the rangiest sideline to sideline kind of guy. I think he loses a step in coverage a lot as well. But again, that's kind of what you would probably expect from a bigger linebacker like him. But he has sort of that short area quickness enough to be able to make plays like that. Hell of a motor too. Like, he's one of those guys that, like, does not quit on any play. He's constantly giving his all and giving the effort that you want to see at the linebacker position. I think just because of the lacking athleticism that he has, again, this is probably somebody that is like a late day 2, early day 3 guy for me. But somebody that I do think can contribute, and be sort of that rotational linebacker that can provide quality snaps, particularly on first and second down. So yeah, a good player. I wouldn't be surprised too, because he is a junior. So I don't think the idea of him not declaring is out of the question. But if he did, again, yeah, probably like late day 2 or early day 3 is what he'd be looking at. But he also has just a lot of competition at the linebacker spot. So in that regard, it might actually be best if he pushes to 2027.
Sam, where are you on Drayk Bowen?
Yeah, I would recommend he goes back to school and just kind of cashes the check from college, because it might be more than what he'll get from the NFL. I had a 4th-round grade on him in the summer. Just watching him next to Jack Kaiser was clear that Kaiser was just such a better athlete and such a more versatile player, especially in coverage. I've come down on him even more since then. I got a 5th-round grade on him right now. Anthony kind of mentioned this is like 2-down player. You can't really play him on coverage downs. He does gain decent depth actually out of mugged-up looks, but when you actually put him in like a coverage situation where he's not just moving, covering space, where he has to cover a player, be instinctive in zone, and kind of identify and diagnose plays, that's an issue for him. So I think there's a significant coverage limitation here. You're dealing with the player who's undersized, he's got shorter arms. He is like a downhill hammer, but he's not powerful enough to consistently stack and shed blocks. We can't do what you see Josiah Trotter do, or Alvaro Reese, or CJ Allen. He doesn't have that ability in him to be able to stack and shed at a high level. And it's not just power in the hands, that's his overall mass. He's just not big enough to handle some of that. I did notice some hit stiffness and coverage. I think the athletic traits for him overall are just very average to below average. He's not a guy who can play sideline to sideline. He runs himself out of too many plays. He's very aggressive coming downhill, so he'll end up being very low in the box, and he'll end up getting scraped out of plays by climbing offensive linemen or take bad angles. He just takes too steep of an approach to the football and takes himself out of too many plays. So I think that as a junior, this is a player who probably should go back to school. He's just, if you're going to be a 5th-round linebacker as a junior, I don't see the reason to declare, frankly.
EJ, where are you on Drayk Bowen right now?
Yeah, he looked like a more of a 2-down tackle to tackle type of linebacker to me. Speaking to what Anthony was talking about his recognition, there are instances I watched him versus USC, and USC they identified man coverage, and he had the running back, and they would run this little speed out to the flat, and he's all over it. They did that. They tried to do that twice, thinking that they could get their running back to outrun him, but he was all over it. He tracked the running back down in the flat. It was more so, it wasn't athleticism, but it was read and recognition. He saw it coming, so he was able to break on it and get a good break on it, and he made a tackle for a loss. That's some of the upside that he has as more of a in the box type of player. But like everybody else said, his overall movement ability is something to be desired there. It's like you don't want him. I mean, you can have him in short zone coverages. You don't want him in any type of real man coverage down the field. There are just movement ability limitations there. As far as him just in the box, he has I think there are signs of good read and recognition, but it needs more development there in that area. It's because like Sam said, he does overrun some plays, and he'll get sucked up into like the running back pressing the hole. He'll get sucked up into that, and it'll expose another gap somewhere else. But you like the mentality that he plays with. He's a fiery guy. He's a downhill guy. He embraces contact. You like that in your linebackers. But it's just that there are just some athletic limitations that's gonna keep him like to a more limited role if he does decide to go to the next level.
Yeah, and to back you up on that, I also saw like the flashes and the quick processing, fitting the run, some of the natural instincts he has in the box. Those are there. It's just I think he needs to be more consistent. He's taking himself out of too many plays right now. Over the summer, when I first watched him, I thought he'd be a player that I would have a 4th round grade on. The NFL might take him the 3rd round just because of the mentality EJ mentioned. Like he has that, and defensive coordinators, linebackers, coaches would love that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But I think at this point, the athletic limitations are probably too much to overcome that aspect.
Okay. Next player, Sam. Deontae Lawson, linebacker from Alabama, 6'2", 228. What else do you have?
Yeah, so I would have had him as a 3rd round grade last year. He had some great tape last season, obviously, before the ACL. It was rough at the start of the year this year, especially the Florida State tape, because he has just had no juice. Like he had no speed in him whatsoever. I still think he's working back from it, frankly. I expect him to be a little bit faster, a little bit more natural next year. But I think the days of Deontae Lawson is already a bit of an older prospect, being a top 100 guy, probably over. I think to me, we're looking at like a 4th round player at this point. And that's fine. He's got great experience. He's got great leadership. He's been the green dot at Alabama. So there's a lot to work off of. And I think we can appreciate with Deontae Lawson. But at that size, with that arm length, coming off the injury, I don't think we're going to see a player who's going to be a top 100 pick at this point in his career. But he does, I think, have some nice short area agility where he can be able to avoid blocks coming up to him at the 2nd level. He's able to elude blockers, work downhill, and stop the run. That's something he retained from last year to this year. You still continue to see that. Generally good change of direction ability and short area quickness. He does have a club move. He's got some swipes. He's got some creative hand usage to be able to get off of blocks at the 2nd level. He just does a good job being an alignment to their landmarks in the run game. And he kind of has that speed and processing from all the experience he has is what's really carrying him through being kind of an average athlete at this point. Despite being his size, he's really not a high-level speedster type guy. Doesn't have the best range, doesn't have the best pursuit speed or the best burst, which could be a problem for him come combine time, which is why I think he's not going to be more than a day 3 player. But that said, like he has the intelligence you're looking for in a linebacker is all there for him right now. Even in zones, I think his coverage ability has gone down a little bit from last year to this year. I think he's doing a little bit less than he was asked to do last year. But he still does a good job playing receiving options tight in zone coverage, kind of reading the quarterback's eyes, sitting in lanes and kind of taking stuff away that way. But the size is a bit of a concern. Like in speed bursts are issues for me. Range is a bit of an issue. Then obviously at his size doesn't have the play strength to really take on stack blocks. He's had a lot of issues finishing tackles this year as well. And he does tend to have the instances of overcommitting and taking poor run fits that open up holes elsewhere. So I have some questions about him and man coverage and the athletic ability there. I have questions about his ability to take on and stack and shed blocks. I think this guy could potentially develop into like a role player who might get snaps at a starting level at some point. But I can't go out there and say, hey, you need to invest a 3rd or 2nd round pick in this player at this point.
So, EJ, where are you on Deontae Lawson right now?
Yeah, with Deontay, like before he got the knee injury, his his speed and movement ability, it was, I would say, average. But after the injury, you can tell it's like he's really just a step slow, and he never was that strong of a player to begin with, and he's a little bit undersized at 228, playing a Mike linebacker position. There's is not a lot of, I don't think his play strength is NFL caliber. Because when he's trying to shed blocks, when he's putting hands on guys, it's not making any type of impact. He doesn't have any type of impactful movement with guys. Like if he's running into an offensive lineman is not going to react to it at all. As far as pursuit speed, I would say is average. I mean, you can see other guys get to the ball faster than he does, even though when you can see on film he diagnoses it just as fast as everybody else, but other guys get to the ball faster. So it's just with him, it's just athletic limitations. Medicals are going to be big for him because we see the effect that the injury has had. But yeah, it's just, if he's going to be a player at the next level, it's going to be on instincts and experience and smarts. That's where he's going to have to win at, because he will have no physical advantages against anybody in the NFL. So he's going to have to win with his head, with his heady play, and he's going to have to get stronger as a player.
He wins on the whiteboard, but he's got to find a way to get that onto the football field.
Yeah. He's a guy coaches will love, but he's also a guy that'll get coaches fired, because like some guys gonna love him. Yeah, some guys gonna love him and like, oh, he does everything right on the whiteboard, I gotta put him out there. Then he's gonna get his ass handed to him out there, and then that'll get the coaches fired because he put him out there. So he's a double-edged sword.
So one of my favorite quotes, EJ, was by Marv Levy. And he said, all his depth does is get coaches fired.
That's facts.
So, Anthony, where are you and Deontae Lawson?
Yeah. It's really a bummer with him, because even this year, I feel like, the prior to the Oklahoma game, I kind of thought we were starting to get back to like Deontae getting to where we were pre ACL injury, where like, oh, okay, you could see some of the burst, and it seems like he's getting some explosiveness back, and you see the IQ that he has and all that. And then Oklahoma kind of just like reminded you like, oh yeah, nope, he's still 228 and still struggles with tackling sometimes, and it was not his best game. So yeah, I've tried to hold out hope that Deontae could come back and be more of a day two guy. But I am kind of starting to fall off a bit. I mean, I agree with a lot of what was said. I do think he's a smart, physical player that can, I think he can shed blocks well. I think he can make plays with explosiveness, and I think he has it. Sometimes it just doesn't feel like it's been there since the ACL injury. If he, maybe we'll see once he gets on an NFL roster, if that, if he is able to get back more to that form that he was. At this point, it kind of just feels like he's a depth piece that, I think he could have like a special teams floor, and I don't know if he's ever taken special teams snaps, probably not in a while if he ever has. But yeah, I think he is, to EJ's point, like somebody that coaches will want in a locker room. But it does kind of feel like, again, the prospect of him being a like starting NFL linebacker, it kind of feels like that ship is starting to sail, as disappointing as it is, because I really was a fan of his, and I thought he'd be really good, but it's just not panning out. And again, too, like in this class, it's just not, there's not as much margin for error as there would be in other linebacker classes, to where like this kind of player just doesn't, I don't think is going to be a top 100 pick.
Okay. EJ, Taureen York from Texas A&M. Shout out to Sam. Thank you for correcting the spelling. Much appreciated. What did you have on Taureen York from Texas A&M, EJ?
First thing that stood out to me with him is he's a smart player. I mean, like I watched him versus Arkansas. First play of the game, he's pointing out pin pull to the right, and sure enough, it's pin pull to the right. Now that play is like a microcosm of what he is as a player, because he knew the play before it was coming, and he triggered downhill to get to it, but he got swallowed up by an offensive lineman. And we see the size right there, 5'10", 227. There's no way around it. He's a smaller type of linebacker. And you see those size limitations when he has to stack and shed. He has the hand usage, but it's just that his play strength is average. I would say average to below average by NFL standards. But if he's in a defensive scheme that keeps him clean to where he doesn't have to see all those offensive linemen, he'll make tackles all day because he's instinctive. He's smart. He realizes the formations. He reads his keys. He can get downhill. It's just that there are, as far as physicality, he does have physicality, but there is limited physicality because he's not that strong of a player. He's smart in coverage. He's not necessarily the most rangy, the fastest, although he does have some quickness. But I believe he's serviceable in pass coverage, I would say. Only thing, like the main thing you have to get past is the size limitations with him, the size and strength limitations. As far as getting downhill, he does that. He's feisty, he's aggressive, he's got that linebacker mentality that you want. But if there are going to be some instances where he's just not going to be not going to be physical enough to make the play. Now, the hope is that maybe he can be the guy that just directing the traffic and just getting his teammates to go make the play, where he's using his head and his instincts to help the defense out. Hopefully that works out for him. But he's another guy I would say has to get stronger. I say that a lot about a lot of these linebackers. They need to get stronger to get to the next level, because it's just a different game at the next level as far as taking on blocks and stacking and shedding and everything like that. But if he's a guy that you can keep clean early on, he can go make plays for you.
Okay. Is your grade day 2 or day 3?
Day 3.
Okay. Anthony, where are you in Taureen York from Texas A&M?
Yeah, Taureen, I just feel like it really just comes down to size, because I think he checks pretty much every box in terms of, I think he's a good athlete. EJ said the first thing he said, and he's right. Like, dude is just a smart football player. You see him calling out plays, calling out assignments, communicating with teammates. He's certainly a leader on that defense, and really not even a surprise. This is somebody who's started all 3 years at Texas A&M. You know, again, like he was, even as a true freshman, he was starting as a linebacker. So clearly the coaching staff thought highly of him from the jump, and you could see why when he plays. He can even, like, for somebody who is smaller, I think he can be deployed as a rusher because of that, ability to. I think he has the speed to chase down guys and can make plays in the backfield. I just, at 5'10", really small arms too. I worry, like, he gets swallowed up by blockers like too easily. I mean, again, you would expect it for somebody with that size, but I'm just really worried that, like, in the NFL, he's just not going to be able to keep up from a physical standpoint and from just measurable standpoint. I like the player. I like the athleticism and the skill set and the football acumen that he brings. This is another guy that I feel like coaches are going to be like, yeah, let's get this guy in our linebacker room and we'll use him somehow. But it's just, this is sort of, not a one-to-one, but it kind of reminds me of like Paul from last year, where I think he did a lot of things well, but I just think size was just too much for me to like love him as much as other people did. And I think that's kind of where Taureen York kind of falls in that sort of same realm.
And Sam, where are you on Taureen York from Texas A&M?
Yeah, I've got a late fourth on him, but predictably, I'd probably expect him to go further down the board than that at this point. Again, the anticipation and the recognition that he showcases is pretty high level stuff, especially when it comes to attacking screenplays and also some of the run plays you showcase. He's really fearless attacking downhill despite not having that traditional size. I think the pre-snap communication is awesome. Recognition is really good. I think he plays a little bit faster than his testing time will tell. Because I remember James Foster and Corey Kinnan were talking about him on a podcast one time, and I believe they said like all of his speed and acceleration metrics or in-game testing is all like 50th percentile or with like right around 50th percentile, which is not impactful for a player that size. Like it should be much higher than that. So if he tests like middle of the pack-ish, I think you were looking at more like a mid to late day 3 pick. But I do think that speed shows up a little bit more on tape than it does actually into testing data. Great motor, really quick trigger as well. Very ferocious player in pursuit. He's the guy who's going to play like kind of want to punch above his weight a little bit. But I don't know if you've seen this. There's like a video floating around the internet where it's like a honey badger trying to take on an elephant, and the elephant just kind of punts it a little bit. And I feel like Taureen York sometimes that honey badger where he's going after guys at a high level, but he runs into an elephant every now and then, and there's nothing he can do about it. He's just way too undersized. The arm length is a problem. He doesn't stack and shed at a high level. Too easy to remove out of run plays. I don't think his acceleration pops a lot. There was a play against LSU where it's just running like a short corner run play for the running back. You just got to be able to match his speed to when York can. You can stop a touchdown deep in the red zone. And the running back just gets right past him. He just doesn't have the acceleration to match that kind of speed. So when he gets isolated against playmakers, it can be difficult for him. In coverage, I think that's a pretty significant issue for him as well. He's primarily operating at short depths. This is a player who's really good against the run, really good coming forward, not as good going backward. I think he's got issues mirroring players in coverage. He doesn't really have like the instinctiveness, I would say, in coverage right now. It's a lot of like just following the quarterback's eyes, and it leads to him falling for a lot of eye manipulation and getting moved out of throwing lanes. So I think this is just – I have late fourth on him. But again, if I had to predict where he's going, I'd probably lean more 5th, 6th round.
And then, EJ, do you know Markel? Because he's an Eagles fan too, and he has his own Eagles podcast. Do you know Markel?
Yeah, I know Markel. I've seen him. I've seen him on the app, of course, and I've seen him in the group chat and all that. So yeah. That's actually a good question too. He says this year's class, class of linebackers are a little bit smaller. Usually, with these smaller linebackers, smaller is not like usually height, is usually weight. So usually these guys are coming in 220 or 230, something like that. And honestly, a lot of these guys playing weight like this around this time of year, their playing weight is probably around, if they came into the league, into the season like at 230, 240, they're probably playing around 215, 220 right now, because naturally smaller guys tend to lose all that weight that they pack on. But when you're playing linebacker, for one, you're naturally probably going to get bigger as your years go on. You're going to get, if you're working on your craft, you're naturally going to get bigger and naturally going to get stronger. So that's part of it. The other part of it is, if you're going to play as a smaller linebacker, more than likely defensive coordinators are going to put you more in space. They're not going to, if you're a smaller guy, they're not going to put you among all the trees and watch you get knocked around. They're going to put you more in space. They're going to try to find roles for you where your roles are going to be more specified. So you're going to be coming in on obvious passing situations, or you're going to be a blitzer off the edge where you're not accounted for in the protection scheme, so nobody can really put their hands on you. So that'll be roles for guys that have that type of limitation. As far as, the defense is getting bigger and all that, everybody is going back to base defenses. You're probably going to see a lot more odd fronts in your base defense, and that way your stack linebackers are playing more of a cleanup role, while your offensive linemen and your defensive linemen are taking on the offensive lineman, maybe two gap and a half or something like that. That leaves your linebackers free to roam and keeps the offensive lineman off of you. But more than likely, the best answer to that question is you got to get guys that have a frame that can add weight and can add strength, or draft guys that have the necessary strength already.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So the next player, Whit Weeks from LSU. Anthony, do you want to kick this one off?
There we go. Yes, the boyfriend of Landry Kiffin, for those who don't know. So, yeah, Whit Weeks is, I think, somebody who, coming into the year, I feel like people were a lot higher on him than I was. I mean, I feel like I was seeing, like, top 50 love for him, and I wasn't quite there. But I could see why people like him. I think he has explosive burst, and is able to attack in the backfield well. He's somebody who, when you watch him, he doesn't really, like, he goes around blockers more than through them. He's not somebody that's going to be, your grab, stack, and shed kind of guy. He's going to be more of a try to bend around you, try to just, run past you with just pure speed. And he's able to do that fairly well. Now, all of this is with the caveat that he was doing this before suffering an ankle injury about a month ago. He has not played since like October something. He is listed as probable to play this weekend, so we will see how he does post ankle injury now in the final weeks of the season here for the Tigers. But assuming we are talking about the player that we saw before the injury, I think he has good speed and quickness. I think he has good intangibles, able to diagnose well. I feel like the issues I had and still have with him are mostly in coverage. Not somebody who I think can stay with a man in coverage usually. I think he doesn't really play the ball in the air well, and ball skills isn't really something that you're like prioritizing at the linebacker position, but you'd like him to be able to at least get more involved, because we're talking about a 225-pound linebacker. So this is somebody that because he is smaller, you're going to want him to operate in space and operate on passing downs. And I would kind of want to see more from him in that regard. Also, because he's 225 pounds, this is another player who I think struggles to get off blocks and can get, sort of overpowered by bigger blockers. I don't think it's as problematic as with Taureen York, in part because Whit Weeks is 6'2", whereas Taureen York is 5'10", and I think has just a naturally better build to be able to deal with it. But I still think he just lacks the sort of just mass and strength to be able to operate consistently getting off blocks on rundowns. So again, a lot of it is going to be, is he going to return to being the player that he was before the injury? And, are there any long-term effects of that as the season comes to a close here? If not, I'd probably still say, like, I don't know, maybe he'll be in my top 100. But again, I kind of just, now with the injury and the problems I already had, I wasn't particularly a big fan of his. But I can understand why people like him. I do also think he feels like a leader of that defense, and it feels like he is somebody that has the respect of the locker room. So that I think is worth mentioning also. I think he also, doesn't he have like two brothers on the team? Like the whole family is basically on LSU. So that's, that I think speaks also to just, the respect that he's earned from the coaching staff, that the whole family is basically there now. But yeah, I do kind of just worry about, again, similar to Torian, like, what is he really going to be at the NFL level? I think that upside might be a bit limited.
Sam, where are you on Whit Weeks from LSU right now?
I went back and rewatched a lot of his 2024 tape because, again, like this year, he's playing hurt. The past like 2 games, he was actually playing full time. So I watched Clemson and I went back and watched a lot of his tape from last year. He's only a junior. I expect him to go back to school. Coming off the injury shortened season, and everything like that, all the changes going on at LSU. And if he did declare, it probably would be because of the coaching transition and just not wanting to have to deal with that. But otherwise, I see no reason for him to come out because he's going to be like a 5th round pick. I have him as like a late 4th, early 5th round pick at this point. And tape last year is not especially better than this year. If you're looking for like the negatives, take everything I said about Taureen York, just remove all the athletic downside. And it's basically the same list of negatives. Look at positives, take out the high IQ football plays and just throw in positive athletic traits, essentially. He's got sideline speed, he got good range. He can be more impactful in coverage than he is right now. He just doesn't do a lot in coverage at this point, doesn't really have the instincts for it, but he has the speed, the agility, the change of direction where he can be an impactful player in that area of the game. He can carry wheel routes downfield, he can carry players at the seam. He's got good recovery speed late when he has to get back in touch with crossing routes. So he's got the athletic traits to be a really impactful player in that area. Like we talked about, short arms, lean frame, very small player, easily rerouted by contact, can't play really down that deep in the box because of it. Has a lot of really unfinished plays in the backfield or in the gap where he just is not able to get a guy on the ground. Really bad tackling power. And I think he gets caught flat-footed in coverage way too often where he's just not prepared to turn and run with guys. And that leads to him getting stacked a lot. He'll hook guys as well, so that will draw flags in the NFL. Just not a player who in coverage is polished enough to be impactful. And then because of his size and his tendency to overrun gaps and kind of take himself out of plays, can't deconstruct blocks. This is just like a special teams player who maybe will develop into a role player in 2 or 3 years, essentially.
EJ, how about you?
Yeah, he looks like a raw player. I mean, I love the athlete, the movement ability, the burst, the speed. He has all of that. The athletic traits are why we're talking about him right now. Everything else is just so raw. He's just so behind on everything else. He needs to get. He's another player needs to get stronger. He's not like him being able to take on blocks right now is not NFL caliber. At the college level, he's athletic enough to dip around blocks and avoid blockers, but that's a double-edged sword because now you're taking away your gap integrity because every linebacker has a gap that they're supposed to man, and if you're jumping out of that gap to avoid blockers, the running back is going to run right through. You're not at your post. So he needs to get stronger first and foremost. The speed and the athleticism it looks very good on tape, but he needs to work on actually knowing where he's going. He needs more purpose in his movement. In coverage, he's kind of just like he can run with guys. If you want to play him in man coverage, he can run with anybody. But in zone, his awareness and his reading is a tick slow. As far as a blitzer, as a pass rusher, he has the speed to surprise some guys. But just like wide receivers get knocked off of their route when the safety tries to reroute them or put hands on him, he gets knocked off of his blitz path by offensive linemen just pushing at him. I watched him just like he had a clear shot at the quarterback. This one offensive lineman just put a hand on it, put a hand on his shoulder and knocked him 3 yards to the side, and he was completely out of the play. So that's that's contact balance, that's play strength, that's core strength. He needs to get stronger as a player. I wouldn't be surprised if he went back and then came back and had that type of rise that Arvell Reese is having now. Because he just needs more development as a player. Love the athlete, love the physical traits, but it's just he's so raw in every other area of his game. I think he should go back.
Okay, 3 linebackers left to go. Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas. Sam, what do you have on the Texas linebacker?
Yeah, so I have Anthony Hill graded out as a 3rd rounder right now. I do think there's some projection baked in there. Or if you ask me where would he sit right now if you dropped him on an NFL field, probably not in the greatest position. He is a very young player, and I think he's improved a little bit across the course of the past 2 years. I think he's got decent enough arm length, good lateral agility, very good overall athlete. He creates a lot of havoc, shooting gaps, and he's got impressive speed and range, fluid hips as well. Decent job reading the quarterback's eyes in zone coverage, but certainly can improve in coverage. That's an area where most of the guys we talk about today have a lot of room for improvement. Got a good overall athletic advantage, though, when he's going one-on-one against offensive linemen in space. I think that's probably why some people, mainly I think Matt Miller, were talking about him being an edge rusher, is because they thought he had the athletic advantage. He's not an edge rusher. He has no pass rush plan. That's not happening in the course of a year. But that being said, it does speak to the level of athleticism he has to be able to make these kind of plays and be a really good athlete at the second level. He does have some ability as a blitzer. We see him like overwhelming running backs and pass pro. He's able to kind of redirect around guards when he's lined up along the interior and blitzing that way. Really good closing burst as well, where he's able to beat running backs to the corner. He can work across the face of linemen when they're climbing up to him in space. And he's able to out-leverage blockers in space as well, kind of swoop past them, cut back inside, and make the tackle. So a really good athlete at the second level. He does have a tendency to kind of overrun plays in pursuit. Doesn't really take on, stack, and shed blocks at the high level. He's more of a guy who's going to have to elude blocks right now. But he frequently does commit very early in the play and often overcommit to the wrong gap and ends up just not fitting in the right place. A lot of the guys who I think are grading out higher for me in this draft are the players who showcase a lot of patience at the second level, and they have developed that instinct to fit the run. But it's not just the instinct itself, it's the ability to wait that extra beat, to see the play develop and then figure out where the running back is going. And I don't think that you see that quite yet with Anthony Hill, where he's just firing downhill. He's already determined where he's going to go, and he's ducking in to try to make the attack down there. And again, that creates some level of disruption, but it does not make him as effective as he can be if he's a little bit more patient at the second level. And then he's a player in coverage I do worry about a little bit. He's very inconsistent in man coverage. I think that you can get him exposed at times in that area. He's late to recognize route concepts as well. So I think that coverage is probably the biggest area of improvement for him. And then I would go to block deconstruction being the second area I'm worried about, because he doesn't have that natural pop in his upper body to generate that quick separation on contact. So those are the areas he needs to improve, but a really good overall athlete who's got the frame to develop into more of an all-around player who can play consistently and be a star for you. I feel like guys like Taureen, Whit Weeks, I feel a little bit less comfortable with where they're going to develop into physically. I feel like that Anthony Hill can give you more versatility than those guys can and has a better frame to work off of.
EJ, where are you on Anthony Hill from Texas?
Yeah, I think he's a little bit of a throwback. He's a guy I wouldn't mind having him. Like, he's going to do most of his damage close to the line of scrimmage. Not the most fluid guy in coverage, like Sam said, but you can drop him in some short zones, and he's going to have to just develop that awareness. But coverage is never going to be his real strong suit. What Texas does with him is usually on first and second downs or on neutral downs, they're either run blitzing with him, and as far as like with run blitzing, they're just, you have no coverage responsibility. Just go shoot, just shoot a gap and attack the line of scrimmage. Or they're doing what's called spill and splatter, where where you got your two stack linebackers. You send your one linebacker to the line of scrimmage, just go there, create havoc, just run and you see him, he's got no plan. He's just running head first into a brick wall. That's where you see him doing that. They run the linebacker into the line of scrimmage to create havoc, and the other linebacker cleans it up, because the point is to force the run or force the offensive player to the outside where all your help is, all your fast guys are. Then they can go and make the tackle. Now, why they send him on that mission to just run into the offensive line that's the question that we need to find out. Do the coaching staff trust his ability to read and react to offensive blocking schemes, or do they just value his play strength or his disruptiveness in the line of scrimmage? We don't know that. That's to be determined. But what he is like, you like the size, you like the movement ability at that size. but I don't, like Sam said, he's not an edge rusher. I don't think that's not his game. He's just a pure stack linebacker. But what you can get some physical play at the line of scrimmage from him. He's going to go and blow some stuff up. If he's paired next to another linebacker that has a little bit more range and he can go be that spill linebacker and go attack the line of scrimmage and bust up the A gap, he'll have success at the next level. But it's just that his role is going to be very, very, very specialized, where he's going to need some help as far as the further away from the line of scrimmage he goes. He's going to need a little bit more help because the coverage is not going to be his strongest suit. But I like the downhill ability. I like the physical ability. He's one of the few linebackers where I don't have a big problem with their play strength. Now he needs to develop his hand usage a little bit more because he's meeting everything with his head or with his chest. So he could actually realize that he has hands and arms and use those. But as far as the physical traits and the downhill playing ability, I like that a lot about him. I guess I give him like a 3rd round grade.
Okay. Anthony, where are you and Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas?
Yeah, I think a lot of similarities here. I feel like most of the first round buzz that he was getting, during the summer was based on the idea that he could be. I think people thought he was going to be Arvell Reese this year. Like he was going to be this edge rushing, phenom, but also could play off ball and could be this athlete in coverage, but also had the ability to wreak havoc, as a rusher. And that just hasn't manifested. And I think it's for the reasons that Sam and EJ laid out, where he has the athleticism and the speed to be able to be a rusher. He just doesn't have any sort of pass rush arsenal or plan or hand usage ability. Like it's just none of that is there, and you need that. Like we've seen Arvell Reese able to, he shows pop in his hands. He shows an ability to fight off blockers with physicality as much as with bend and athleticism, whereas Hill doesn't really do that. Now, I will say, too, one of the issues that I had with Anthony Hill coming into the year was I thought his tackling was just atrocious. I think he's improved in that regard, so I'll give him that credit. But overall, yeah, I don't think he's quite the player that many people in the draft world were hoping he would be. I kind of wonder. I wonder if he'd go back. I feel like because I still think he's a day 2 player. I would probably also honestly say he's a 3rd round guy, but I won't be stunned if a team took him in the 2nd round. Just again, projecting the athleticism and the upside that he brings you. I would not be surprised if a team loved that and wanted to use a 2nd round pick on him for that reason. I also do think he has the size. Like I don't think it's impossible for him to develop the physicality and the strength, the play strength, I should say, that he needs to be a consistent 3-down linebacker. You just kind of wish you would have seen it by now. So, teams will meet with him, and if he declares, and they'll sort of make that determination if they think he has that that ability to develop. I also thought, maybe just me, I thought he was a little hot and cold as a player. Like if you watch the Mississippi State game, he's a 1st round player. Like he looks like a legit 1st round prospect in that game. The problem is there's several other games where he's like a non-factor. So it's a little hot and cold, and that worries me a bit. But yeah, if he came back to Texas and had the Arvell Reese season next year, I wouldn't be surprised, because I think he checks every physical box to do that. It's just you kind of wish he'd be a little farther along on the development track, but I still think day 2 player.
Okay. We've gone, Sam, you've already done Anthony Hill, right? We start with you. Okay. 2 more linebackers to go. EJ, Sonny Styles from Ohio State.
Yeah, he's fun. He's a testament to his development. He's a guy that he was a defensive back, so he's made the switch over down to linebacker, and it's fine. It's starting to work out for him. He looks better at linebacker than he did last year. But the thing about him is he's a pure athlete. He still has, even at that size, 6'5", 243, he still has fluid movements in space. That's where you really see him stand out in space, because he can run. He's one of the few linebackers in this class that has no problem playing backwards. So if you want to drop him into coverage, if you want him to play that apex position or that nickel slot position, he actually can do that. Or if you want him to run with a running back on a wheel route, he can do that with no problem at all. So like that, the former defensive back, yeah, exactly. Who's the best pass catcher? He's the best one I've seen so far. But his ability to against the run, the physical ability, while it has improved greatly. It's still not. It still needs to get a little bit better. As far as play strength goes, he needs to get a little bit stronger. He's a solid tackler. He gives you the effort, the want to. Sometimes he's more of a wrap up guy and try to drag him down. He's not delivering a blow. He tries to hit you with the kill shot when guys are catching hospital balls or something like that. He'll try to hit you with the kill shot. But as far as a down to down in and out play strength, that needs to be a little bit better. But his read and react, his play neck recognition has gotten better. He's trying to develop those linebacker instincts. So that's the biggest issue when you got safeties that's coming down and transition into linebacker. They need to develop those linebacker instincts because everything happens a lot faster. He's starting to develop that, even though that still needs more development. As a player right now, I wouldn't mark him as a green dot linebacker. I don't want him running the show. I want him more as a point and shoot linebacker, to where you're cleaning up the mess. If something spills outside, you go clean it up because you have that speed in that range. And then I'm using you as like a fastball against as a blitzer or coming from depth, attacking the line of scrimmage. So he's a perfect complement to what Arvell Reese brings to the table, because Arvell Reese is a little bit more physical, a little bit more of an in the box type of player, but his range and his ability are what really makes him stand out. So I'm honestly, on athleticism alone, he'll probably get drafted in the 2nd round. And he's a guy that he's pure upside. A coach is going to see him and they're going to believe wholeheartedly that they can make something out of him. And they could be right, because he has everything physically that you would need for the linebacker position. It's just that he needs to just more development. It's just more development. I think he's ready for the next level, but you want to start him off slower, give him a more specified role, and let him grow into who he's going to be. But definitely, I got a day 2 grade on Sonny Styles.
Anthony, where are you on this Ohio State linebacker?
Yeah, it's so I almost feel bad for Sonny Styles, because I think he would be like I think he would be linebacker 1, and he's not even linebacker 1 on his own team. But like in most draft classes, like there just aren't players like Sonny Styles. He's almost like a creative player, where like he has these, he has like the linebacker measurable, 6'5", 243. I've seen like 6'4", 235, but anywhere in that range is like ideal linebacker build. But he is, he's a converted safety, and he very much looks like a converted safety. The Brandon X, who is the best pass coverage safety or linebacker in this class, it's Sonny Styles. This dude can line up with running backs. He can line up with tight ends. He can just operate, in zone coverage, and play the ball in the air, well, and make plays in coverage, but also just has the speed and fluidity to be able to play sideline to sideline as a linebacker. I mean, dude is just a great athlete. I think he's pretty great in pursuit as well. He's got. I think you're starting to see the emergence of like a little bit of pass rush upside. By no means is it like, the next Ohio State linebacker we're going to talk about. It's not quite there, but again, a guy who like from a frame and athleticism standpoint, I think could eventually develop that part of his game and add that to just being basically like a defensive chess piece for wherever he winds up. I think the other big thing for me too is this year, per PFF, 0 missed tackles in 2025, which was really, I think, one of the big things for him. And I do agree with EJ. Like, I do think he still needs to get more physically imposing and get more willing to take on blockers, at the next level. But I am happy to see that his tackling isn't, a sore spot in his game like it was last season. Because I was one of the people I thought he would declare last year and probably would have been a day 2 guy. But I'm glad he ignored me and stayed, because now I think like I think first round's on the table for him. I'm not sure. Again, it really just comes down to how teams are going to value him, and I feel like you are going to want to have a plan of attack with him, and to utilize him, again, for his coverage abilities, while also developing him as just a pure downhill linebacker, because he's still doing that. But I just think the athletic traits are just so great, and the coverage ability is so great for a 235, 240 pound player. It's just too good to pass up, in my opinion. I would take him again, probably like, late, like 20s, 20s to 30s, is where I think Sonny Styles is going to wind up.
Yeah, we covered Sonny Styles last year in preparation for the draft, and Josh Townsend had him as easily top 50, and he would consider taking him late first last year. So it's good to see that when Sonny Styles went back to school, he's, let's say, improving his stock. But Sam, where are you on Sonny Styles from Ohio State?
Yeah, he's my linebacker too. I have a second round grade on him. I was not a Sonny Styles fan last year. I had him like top 100 based purely on traits, but I had a third round grade on him. I thought he was really underdeveloped in terms of being able to read and understand key on the run, essentially. This year, I think that the run fitting instincts and the ability to quickly process information in the box is taking a huge step forward. And to me, that's what's elevated him from being just this athletic, toolsy, traits-based prospect to a guy who I think could legitimately walk in for you and start in week 1. Is that he has showcased some of that mental development and has built on that experience to be a more instinctive player. He's got obviously great size and athletic ability. He's going to probably be one of, if not the top testing linebackers in the combine this year, assuming he even bothers to test, because of the combination of tools he has. I do think he's a little high-hipped at times. I don't think his hands had a lot of pop, to kind of go back to EJ's point, which I think was talking a little bit about the ability to stack blocks in the box. And I think that's a concern for him, is sometimes he does get stuck on blocks or he gets displaced a little bit too easily. He needs to really work on that hand usage to develop some counters to shed line quicker and create some that quick separation to redirect to the football. I would tell him he's more of a slashing player than like a true guy who's going to anchor and set the point of attack. So he's more into slashing and creating early disruption and creating opportunities for other players to work in behind him than he is at setting the point of attack. However, he does use his long arms, and he kind of gets low, and he's able to dig up and really pry up the pad levels of some climbing linemen to win that leverage battle, stack them up, and create some disruption at the point of attack that way. So I do think there's a little bit of a development in that area that he needs to work on, but you do have some high-end flashes of him being able to stack and shed blocks at the point of attack. Again, linebacker 2 for me. You guys touched on everything else, so I'm not going to go back and rehash it all, but an incredible athlete who showcased good development over the past 2 to 3 years, and I think will only get better as he gets more time on task for the linebacker position.
Yeah, and I like how one of you said he's not even the best linebacker on his own team. And in most other draft classes, Sonny Styles would be linebacker 1. So we're covering Arvell Reese with the Edge Group. Newton Owen podcasted on him Wednesday. We're covering Arvell Reese with the linebacker group. Anthony, you want to kick off the star of the show, Arvell Reese from Ohio State.
Yeah, so first I'll actually say I kind of lied because I said that he's not the best linebacker on his own team, Sonny Styles. But I actually have Arvell Reese graded as an edge. So technically, by my account, he is the best linebacker prospect on Ohio State. But yeah, man, what can we say about Arvell Reese? Well, we could say that I think he, just in general, has been the single biggest, most improved, I guess, player in college football. Somebody that I don't think had really any top 75 to even 100 grades coming into the year. And now I don't think anyone has him outside the top 10. The ability to stack and shed, and I mean, you see he's 6'4", 243. So like he's got the, ideal build for a good, solid run defending linebacker / edge hybrid, whatever. The stack and shed ability is phenomenal. The power that he has, and we don't have an official, I don't have an official arm length for him, but it looks like he's got long arms, and you will see him just engage with blockers, hit them hard, and then displace, I mean, offensive linemen that are 300-something pounds, moves them aside like they're nothing, and then is able to, make the play on the running back or the quarterback or whoever it is. I watched, because me personally, I'm always a little skeptical when somebody is this, day 2 or 3 player that all of a sudden just emerges and becomes like this consensus top player. And so, I'm a little like, okay, is it maybe just like flash in the pan? Has he kept it up the whole season of being this great player? And so I went back and I watched Penn State, the Penn State game, and like, yeah, he was single-handedly just whooping Drew Shelton, who I had, not now, but I had him originally as a potential first-round offensive tackle coming into the year. And Arvell Reese just like made him look like a junior college player. It was astounding to watch. And then on top of all of that good stuff, the speed and explosiveness and bend that you see as a pass rusher, and also in coverage, and you'll see him like in the box, and again just like attacking, these quick out routes or the swing passes and all that, and just his ability to just, even when I do think he's a little slow in terms of just like pure instincts, I think he is a tick behind compared to a couple other guys that we've talked about and are in this class. But it almost like doesn't matter because he's just so freakishly fast for 240 pounds that he makes up for it and very rarely, if ever, have I seen him like get blown past by some, speedy back. So like, yeah, like maybe the instincts aren't perfect for an off-ball guy. That would be like my knock, I guess, on him. I guess the other one too is I think the pass rush athleticism and just like upside is there, and you've seen it this season where he just literally will forklift offensive linemen off the ground and move them back, and then able to get the sack or at least create the pressure. I don't think he necessarily has a developed arsenal of pass rush moves. So if you are drafting him as an edge, which again I would, I think that's where the highest ceiling and impact is for him at the next level. But if you are if that is your plan to take him and use him primarily as an edge, you're going to need to kind of develop his arsenal and his pass rush skill set a bit. But I don't see a reason why he can't. And again, just the floor, the athletic floor and the physical floor that he brings you already is nothing short of great. So yeah, I was skeptical at first. I'm in like top 10 at least player. I'm still the Ruben Bain guy, who I know has slowed down a little bit the past couple weeks, but I think it's Ruben Bain and then like Arvell Reese. That's your top two defensive players in my opinion.
Sam. You have to follow Anthony. I didn't know.
I'm sorry.
Anthony was just gonna...
I didn't realize I was going to go on a tear like that. I apologize.
No, I don't have much to add because Anthony hit on a lot. But I will say the hand usage to me or the power in the hands and the hand usage is pretty important to me in terms of what he's able to do. Obviously, he's got really explosive power in his hands to quickly stack and shed offensive linemen. You see that also when he's rushing the passer. But great ability to stack and shed and clog the point of attack. I really like the aiming points he has when he's going for long arms or he's using a hump move to break anchors and kind of get guys out of their balance for offensive linemen. So that's really impressive to me. He's obviously a big hitting player with great closing bursts to chase down quarterbacks. And he's got a pretty good change of direction for his size as well. I think rare acceleration too on top of all that. And he is a patient player who can like really wait that extra beat, not overcommit, and that ensures he's fitting the run properly at the second level. He can gain quick depth, when he's bailing out on mugged up looks. But I don't love the coverage profile right now in terms of what we've seen. He's a guy who won't overcommit to a player at the top of the stump, so he's not going to give you a double move. He's not going to give the double move per se. But I think he's a guy who operates primarily at shallow depths. He doesn't really have the dynamic coverage responsibilities right now for me to say is going to be able to seamlessly transition to that role in the NFL. I think he just ends up being kind of a tweener usage-wise. He's a first-round grade for me. He's going to be a top 10, top 15 player. So I don't want to, play him down at all. But would I be the team to draft him? If I have need elsewhere, I probably would go that position because he does have tweener usage. He needs to get better in coverage. He wants to play off-ball. It talks about him transitioning to play edge. That's nice and all. But, Abdul Carter needed an entire summer to figure that out. If you go back and watch the Penn State spring game from Abdul Carter, and going into his final year, he uses a spin move, and that's the only pass rush move he has. And that's the only pass rush move he had the year before that. And it goes into the first year in playing edge full time. The first month of Abdul Carter is bad. It's not productive. He's going against West Virginia's offensive line. He's not productive. And so I think the idea that we're going to put Arvell Reese into the NFL in the span of one summer is going to go ahead and transition from being an All-American linebacker to being this productive. Presumably you would want him to be a top 20 edge right off the bat if you're taking him in the top 10 picks. That to me is just, you're asking for way too much, I think, in terms of making that transition year one. And the type of players who make this transition doesn't always work out. Look what happened with Zaven Collins when you're trying to figure out where does he fit. Now, as long as we don't send Arvell Reese to Arizona, because Arizona has a habit of having these problems with these tweener players. As long as we don't send him to Arizona, we'll be fine. But personally, I think I'm more comfortable with him just being a stack backer to begin his career, and we'll see what about that transition. But trying to make that whole move in one off season when you're already trying to adapt to living on your own and the responsibilities of being an NFL player and everything that comes with that, in addition to just playing football, I think that's probably a huge ask for this player, even if he is supremely talented.
Okay, and EJ, what can you say that hasn't already been said?
I mean, yeah, it's so many different ways that it's only a few ways that you can say that this guy is really good. But not to piggyback off of everything that's already been said, but this guy is, all the physical traits are there. I honestly, I actually would put him at edge. I will sit through the growing pains, and because you're still going to get a baseline of a run defender. I put on my page a 2nd and 4 and a 3rd and 4 versus Penn State, where he is just setting he's owning Drew Shelton. He's just his first responsibility. That's what I want to touch on, his assignment being assignment sound, because first on neutral downs, his job is to set the edge. When he's on the line of scrimmage, his job is to set the edge. You set the hard edge, and you want to funnel everything back into the middle of the defense where all your help is. So he's setting a hard edge. He's got his hands in Drew Shelton's chest, and he's just moving him wherever he wants to. Once he sees he can make the play on 2nd and 4, he throws Drew Shelton aside, and then he goes and tackles the running back, tackle for loss. 3rd and 4, he does the same thing. He's setting the edge, pretty much trying to contain the quarterback from scrambling out of the pocket. But once he sees he can get to the quarterback, he tosses Drew Shelton aside, and he goes and he moves the quarterback out of the pocket, winds up going to 4th down, quarterback runs out of bounds. That's what he can, when he decides he wants to go and get it, he can go and get it. I mean, he has added a push-pull to his arsenal, but the pass rush moves, they're going to come with time. What he is, like a superior athlete coming off the edge, even as a stack linebacker. I mean, during summer scouting, I watched him. Even in summer scouting, he had small sample sizes as a stack linebacker, but you could still see it. You can see the flexibility, you can see the size, you can see the speed. When him and Sonny Styles were on the field together for those few times during the summer, you could see the total team speed that they had at that second level. And that's the type of player he is. First and foremost, he's going to make your defense faster, because the guy can run at that size, and the physical presence that he brings, whether it's from the stack linebacker or whether it's coming off the edge, he has that physical presence he's that physical presence where offensive linemen have to take him into account every snap. With his coverage is it. Like his footwork in the coverage, he looks like a lesser athlete in coverage than he does attacking the line of scrimmage moving forward. So he's a player I always want moving forward more than I want moving backward. That's why I would say I'll put him on the edge. Now, I'm not putting him as a hand in the dirt defensive end, but I will have him as a stand-up edge in the odd front. I will have him as a on-ball Sam. So that's where you can get a head of steam before you attack the offensive lineman, or if you can still drop off in the coverage if you got to do your shallow zones if you're on the strong side or the weak side. So I think that's a decent role for him. Or he can always be a true stack linebacker, because honestly, for me, he's edge 1 and he's linebacker 1. So that's another thing that's why he's going to be a high round pick, is the versatility. He can be successful at multiple roles within a defense. So as going forward, projecting if he reaches the top of his upside, he's a movable chess piece to where he can be disruptive from any level of the field, or from the first 2 levels of the defense. But he's just a very good player. It all depends on what a defensive coordinator wants to do with him, because he's just that good of a player.
Good. So EJ, is Arvell Reese a movable chess piece or a generational player? I'm a little confused.
He's a movable chess piece. There is no such thing as generational players.
Okay.
I will not use that word.
I knew that. That was me poking the bear.
Yeah, of course.
Sam, who are your top 5 linebackers at this point of the draft cycle?
Yeah, so top 5 in order. I've got Arvell Reese 1, Sonny Styles 2, Josiah Trotter 3, CJ Allen 4, and Jake Goldley 5. And there's a tier break after those guys down to Anthony Hill at 6.
Okay. Anthony Russo, is your top 5 different than Sam?
Yeah, well, so I'm not counting Arvell Reese. He's not in my linebacker rankings, but I would have probably Sonny Styles 1, CJ Allen 2. I would have Jake Goldday 3, Anthony Hill Jr. 4, and then Raylan Wilson also at Georgia at 5.
Okay. And EJ, who are your top 5 linebackers right now?
Yeah, mine is pretty much the same. I just got Goldday and Trotter flipped, but yeah, I got Sonny Styles as linebacker 2. I do have Arvell Reese. I got Arvell Reese as linebacker 1 and edge 1. So, but that's pretty much my list is the same as Sam's. Just I got Goldday and Trotter flipped.
Okay. Well, why don't we pause for quick podcaster identification? This is our last linebacker podcast. This is the last time you're going to see this group of people on the same podcast for a while. Sam, do you want to let everybody know about your awesome Substack and everything else that you do?
Yeah, you can find my Substack, Sports Talk with Sam Teets. It's totally free. I've got content come out there regularly. We will see my positional rankings now kind of coming through between now and the end of December, ultimately culminating in a big board with 300, 400 names on it. You'll see content from Senior Bowl. You'll see Shrine Bowl recap content. You'll see player prospect scouting reports, all that kind of stuff, and it's all completely free. So you want to subscribe with your email, gets into your inbox every time it comes out, totally free of charge. We got over 1,000 people now officially on the Substack, so you go check that out. You can also follow me at Sam_Teets33 on Twitter, where I'll post daily clips, so you can go check those out as well.
Anthony.
Yeah, you can find me on X at Anthony_Russo97, posting NFL draft stuff. I've also got a Substack where you can read what I'm doing. I just put out why I don't think Jeremiah Love is necessarily a top 15, 20 player in this class. So you can read that, and you can find me here Friday nights and Saturday mornings. I'll be on tomorrow talking some offensive linemen. So you'll definitely want to watch that. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
EJ.
Yeah, pretty much you can catch me here Thursdays and Fridays on the Mrs. Are Relevant podcast. You can catch me at the end of the draft cycle. I'll do a draft guide for Rogue Analytics. And you can catch me on X or Twitter, pretty much doing film breakdowns, NFL draft content, player breakdowns, scheme breakdowns. No hot takes, no clickbait, no rage bait. And even though Jim tried to make me say it, I will never, ever try to say the word generational.
Yeah, so EJ, I'll poke the bear maybe like once per podcast, or once per draft cycle. So I'm out of turns there. The first thing I want to do is thank Sam, Anthony, EJ, James Foster for breaking down linebackers the last 3 weeks. Draft Professor cannot create this content without all of them coming on as guests. So if this is the first time that you're watching, and there's a lot of you watching right now, give each of these 3 gentlemen a follow on Twitter, please. They're doing great work. This is the last linebacker podcast. So you will see Anthony back on Fridays, probably through December. He and I are working out a couple of logistical changes. You'll be able to catch EJ at his normal spot on Thursdays. EJ's next Thursday podcast is actually going to be slot players. We're going to talk about Harold Perkins and Jalen Kilgore in the same podcast because they play the same position on the field, even if it's labeled differently. So he's putting that together. I'm looking forward to hearing about that a week from Thursday. And then I also want to plug the Draft Professor Simulator. So the simulator is interactive. That means that if Anthony goes in and does a mock draft for the Jets, and then EJ goes in and does a mock draft for the Eagles, and then Sam goes in and does a mock draft for the Steelers, if I mock draft for Buffalo, there's a really good chance the simulator is going to take the players for their teams that they selected in the mock. especially in rounds 3 through 7. So the end users have a lot of control over rounds 3 through 7. So you're going to see a lot of variability for day 3 players at the Draft Professor Simulator. There's nothing like it around. So go ahead and register for Draft Professor. Give the simulator a shout, a try. And if you have any questions, just find me on Twitter, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. With that being said, I appreciate all 3 of you going for 90 minutes. For Sam Teets, Anthony Russo, EJ Holt, Jim Wickens, and the 110 people at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you on a podcast again in about 45 minutes.